Look at this. Oh, my God. It's washing everything away.
They keep telling you to go, go, go. Where are you supposed to go?
Uh-oh.
The Jersey Shore took an absolute beating, and New Jersey kind of took it in the neck worse than any place, I think.
Up to 100 homes have been decimated and left in a rubble that is still smoking even today.
You don't understand. You got to get your trucks here on this corner. We're going to die. We're going to freeze. We got 90-year-old people.
You're going to be okay. Everybody's safe.
My youngest daughter yesterday, Faith, said, Daddy, I want to go home. I told her this is going to be a while, hon.
Hurricane Sandy this week affecting so many millions in the Northeast. Back now on the Roundtable, talk about the political impact as well. We're joined by George Will, Cokie Roberts, Ron Brownstein of the National Journal, our political analyst Matthew Dowd, and Donna Brazile. And George, that was a bit of a surprise in this final week. But now we're coming into this final weekend, both campaigns back to full speed campaigning. Do you see either side having momentum in these final 48 hours?
If there's been a momentum change, it's because of the hurricane, which may have slowed Romney's momentum at all. But I'm not sure how many Americans out there after 9 months of intensive campaigning are paying attention to this. Now, David Axelrod has said that a presidential campaign is an MRI for the soul. At the end of it, you know the souls of both these guys. I think the country knows. I think they knows that, as we Goldwater voters say, this is a choice, not an echo election. And they're ready to vote. And Matthew Dowd, so when you look at our ABC, so many have already voted, exactly. You look at our ABC News Washington Post poll, 48-48. Today, you go back 6 months, almost exactly the same. It doesn't move.
Well, that's what the most interesting thing about this, which is why it's very akin to 2004, is the stability of this race. With a few slight rises and falls, this race, there was no Romney momentum after that first debate. He took back 3 or 4 points. The race went to where it was, and it stayed there for 3 weeks. I actually do believe Sandy has had an effect. I think Monday morning, Mitt Romney would have won the popular vote and lost the Electoral College. I think that's what would have happened. I think what happened in the course of this week, because of the president's handling of it and his approval on it, you can see a slight change in his approval rating and a slight change in the very strong approval on him and a slight change in his favorability. And in a race that's razor thin, that slight movement can shift it from a 1 million vote loss in the popular vote to a 1 million vote gain.
The president has been at that 50% level now on approval.
That's right, and that's a very important number because we know presidents can get reelected at that number. It happened again in 2004. But you really felt this week like the air went out of the Romney balloon. From the first debate on, it was just blowing up and up and up. And even though the numbers weren't changing that much, there was a real sense of movement in that campaign. And it just seems to have completely
and I want to bring this to Ron Brownstein with a question I just asked Ed Gillespie. You see that especially in these state polls in the battlegrounds, which show this consistent lead for the president. But you also heard Ed Gillespie there. They think there is just something fundamentally wrong with those polls.
They think it's going to be a different electorate. I mean, they think the electorate is going to be like 2004 when, through the efforts of Matt and his colleagues, for the first and only time ever, Republicans equaled Democrats as a share of the vote on Election Day in a presidential election. That was a country, though, George, that was 77% of the voters in 2004 were white. We're talking about an election this time where it's going to be 74, 73, or 72. And you see two very different coalitions for the president. In the Sun Belt, he's relying on this growing minority population, plus the upscale white women, where he's running very well, states like Virginia, Colorado, Florida. In the Rust Belt, however, in that firewall of Ohio, Iowa, and Wisconsin, he is running significantly better than anywhere else in the country among those blue-collar white voters, and that is kind of the last line of defense that Romney has not been able to get over.
Well, George, thank you, because I think President Obama has regained his altitude following that first debate when many people just went back and said, what happened? He has a slight tailwind, especially in these battleground states. I've been to many of them. I've been on the radio, and people are so enthusiastic. 6 months ago, I couldn't get anybody to return my call. Just 2 days ago, because they were like, stop it. But 2 days ago, they were not just returning calls, they're bringing people to the polls. As you know, in Ohio today, it's all souls to the polls. The polling stations open for, 5 hours, and people are going out and they're voting early.
Yeah, those long lines, the long lines
you're going to see a lot of
really
the problem with the Romney campaign's theory of the race and what Ed said, the problem with that is it's like the line, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? And their theory is, which is every time you feel a losing campaign, these three things happen. The first thing happens is don't believe the public polls are wrong. Right. That's the first sign of a campaign that's about to lose. The second thing is we're going to change the nature of the electorate and you're not seeing it reflected in the polls. And the third thing is the only poll that counts is Election Day. When you hear those things, you know you're about to lose.
The polls polls are all over the map.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
Well,
They've been
Gallup,
so
Gallup
consistent.
and Rasmussen are much more encouraging to Romney than the others. In fact, there are campaigns in this country today who hire 2 poll takers because they're not sure what they can get from one.
But George, there's 23
making
polls. 21 of them are in the president's favor.
Let me make another. This is our first presidential election since Citizens United, and we began this with all the talk about the power of money that was going to be unleashed. Obama campaign spends $1 billion. Romney campaign spends $1 billion. Procter & Gamble this year will spend $3 billion advertising detergent.
It was such concentrated spending.
And 5 guys in Ohio, right?
Difference.
It made a difference in Ohio.
$1 billion over 5 white women in Ohio. That's what we're doing. That's right. What? TV could have bought them a house. But it has been very helpful to the TV stations.
But 67 super PACs have sprung up over the last 30 days, mostly Republican super PACs, and it's not making a difference.
It could make a difference in Senate and House races, however. And that's the place that we didn't expect to see this much.
And the reality is you're going to see a lot of Republicans come out, and you're going to see enormous racial and ideological polarization in this race. You know, Obama's formula for victory, 80% of the non-white vote, 40% of the white vote if minorities are at least the 26% they were last time. In your poll this morning, 38 and 78, right on the tipping point.
And I want to bring that question to Matthew Dowd, because I wonder when you look at it and you see how sophisticated each side is, how much money they both had, are we into an era now where almost every presidential election is going to be this close, kind of like Grandmaster chess? You almost always play to a draw?
Well, if you take a look at the 3 of the last 4, they've been within 2 or 3 points of a race, which is unprecedented in modern times. The other thing that's happened is 35 years ago, 80% of the people lived in the target states that people concentrate on these campaigns. 80% of the voters lived in the target states. California was a target state. Texas was a target state. New York was a target state. Today, less than 20% of people now live in the target states. And what that's driven, because of the polarization in this country and how we've spent our money into this 49-49 situation, that's going to be very difficult. We could have this conversation for anybody to govern in the aftermath.